This special edition of the Politics program is brought to you by you. Thank you guys so much for supporting this show. And by The Contender, the game of presidential debate. You're going to hear a lot from me and my co-creator on that game, John Teasdale, during this episode. So if at any time you're like, oh my God, these guys know a shit ton about presidents. Well, the reason why is because we did this game called The Contender. So go ahead and check it out. TheContender.us and Amazon as well. But you can only get the mini expansions at TheContender.us. They're great. You're great. Why don't you make beautiful game time memories together? But enough of talking about how we support the show. What do you say we just do the damn thing?
Politics, 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 politics. Yes. Come on, come on, come on.
Welcome to the Politics program. My name is Justin Robert Young, and joining me for this episode, this special episode, is, as I teased up at the top, John Teasdale. How you doing, John?
I am doing great, Justin. How are you?
Oh, man.
It is that season, right?
It is the most wonderful time of the year.
Wonderful time of year where every year, we all know this, you get together with your friends and family and brainstorm.
Who would win in a battle to the death between
among the U.S.
presidents?
presidents?
So for those of you who are unaware, John and I are both nerds and ghouls, apparently. When did... I think I had this thought experiment a little while ago. Maybe about 2 months ago?
Yeah.
Would that be safe?
So you had this going, I think, even before I even knew what PUBG was.
Uh-huh.
I came over and you were playing some game badly.
Yeah.
And you basically were running around on this island, and it just looked like this. The concept of it was so sexy. Just
sure.
It is just you in your underpants on an island. Find clothes, find armor, find guns.
Yeah.
Who wins? Battle to the death. And just that idea just is so appealing. Like you just want to do that.
Yeah.
In a video game. And so naturally, I think the logical next step is, all right, so it's fun to do in a video game, but what would be more fun is if we just had all the presidents do it in real life.
So here's the thing. And by the way, big shout out to Cynical Brit here in our chat room. Says after this question is settled, it would be interesting to revisit with everybody getting to do duos with one of their vice presidents. Hold on to your hat because that comes into play during this experiment. So where do we start? Number one, if you are unfamiliar with PUBG, aka PlayerUnknown's Battleground, it is what is referred to as a King of the Hill fighting game, meaning that you will not fighting game, a King of the Hill game wherein you are parachuted onto an island. It is, for all intents and purposes, if you've never seen it, a abandoned military barracks, right, or an island with a military base on it. There are roads, there are houses, there are sheds, there are hangars with sporadically placed weapons, vehicles, and armor. You are
modern weapons.
Modern weapons and armor. The play zone shrinks on time variables or on time points, right?
Right.
Until eventually there is a very tight time or a very tight play zone, and the last person alive wins.
Yeah.
It's
if
fairly
you're outside,
simple.
if you're outside the play zone, you just suffer damage until you either get back into the play zone or die.
Yeah. So we got to thinking exactly who would win if all the presidents were inside of it. Now, I initially mentioned this on the PX3 show, And some people emailed back ideas and thoughts. But for whatever reason, it really captured your imagination, John.
Yes, it did.
And we got to doing one of the things that we do best, which is...
I make a spreadsheet.
Yes.
and then build from there.
Yeah. And so we research, and by it is very much the royal we on my part, as John did the lion's share of the work. We came up with the best way that we could talk through this thought experiment. Where do we start? Where is the beginning of how we make these rules, how this stuff plays out?
So I think the very, very beginning, before we even got into what makes each president unique within the frame, is we had to set up the rules for how do they get there? How do they arrive on the magical Death Island?
What version of the president is in this game? Right. So because you have to be consistent.
It can't be all presidents now because most are dead.
Yeah.
It can't be and like just saying all presidents at peak physical fitness.
That's totally arbitrary.
It's like and also usually they weren't presidents yet. They weren't interesting.
Yeah, and you can't really take them. Yeah, you can't take them at peak fit, like all of them at 23.
Yeah, it's like you're not a president. You're just some kid.
Yeah. So we settled on, as soon as the president puts their hand on the Bible to be inaugurated,
or whatever it is they're touching when they're sworn in, because a handful of them,
it wasn't always a Bible, right?
Right. Handful of them did not swear in on a Bible.
But they were sworn in.
Yes.
As soon as you take the oath of office,
right,
you are immediately transported to the area, the loading screen or the loading area that happens as everybody's joining the game.
Right. Invincible Mini Island.
Invincible Mini Island. If you've never played the game, there's this little island. There's like a crashed plane. There's a bunch of weapons on tables, so you can get a sense of how the physics of the game work, how the jumping stuff works, and like shooting the game or shooting guns if you've never played before. It's also where, if you're actually playing the game, you're going to hear a lot of 12-year-olds saying the N-word as you walk by them and just hear them during TeamSpeak.
All right. Now, this is very important, which is that all of the presidents arrive on the island. They arrive on starting island with only what they were wearing during their inauguration, and only the knowledge that they had, the knowledge and skills that they had, and the level of health and physical fitness that they had at the moment of their inauguration, with the sole exception of that they know the rules to the game.
Yes. So we're not going to hide behind like modernity, shocking, like, oh my, what is this airplane? Nah! Like,
yeah, they know the rules. But the folks who have never fired or seen a machine gun before still do not know what a machine gun is.
Yeah.
But they're not going to be like, well, what's a game?
Yeah.
What if I go in the what zone I get blown up? Like,
nor are we going to try to have them game the system and create a presidential brigade to help them stop this madness where they're forced to kill each other. They are all going to try to kill each other. They know the rules. They know what's going on. They all have a will to win.
Right. And also in this starter island, the other important thing that happens is they have 2 minutes with which to see who else is there.
Yeah.
So
that there is a little bit of an understanding of who else is in play. Now, this comes very much in handy.
Yes.
Pause on that, though. The one thing I did want to, I did really, really want to give a big shout out to is there was, I believe, on the historical What If subreddit. This is back in 2012. A famous thread about who would win in a knife fight between every American president.
Mm-hmm.
So this is very much something that I think we sort of took from. Now, they had a bit of a different rules. They said every president is in the best physical and mental condition, which we avoided. The presidents are fighting in a arena style, and they're given one standard issue knife, yada, yada, yada. We did not opt to go with those rules, but I did want to give a big shout out to that. If anybody else is a fan of presidential murder what-if scenarios, we understand that we are standing on the shoulders of giants with that one in particular. At least that's the one that I knew about. I'm sure there are others that people have come up with. But we thought this was unique because it combined a lot of different traits.
Right.
That effectively, what went into us statting every president?
So the first thing that we noticed was, or rather, one of the things that in the beginning of this thought experiment, we had to figure out what stays the same and what is constrained by real life.
Yeah.
So we made the decision. All of the weapons, vehicles, and things that you can get in the game are the same.
Yeah.
The rules of the game are the same. The shrinking times and everything, that's all the same.
Yep.
But it is using real world physics. So if you can climb a thing in real life, you can climb a thing in the game. And right.
Yeah, so that's probably the biggest difference is in the game, you have infinite stamina.
Right.
You can run as hard as you can, as fast as you can, for as long as you want to. We did not allow for that. We did not give all the presidents infinite stamina. So there are physical maladies that are going to come into play during this scenario.
Right. A big chunk of the presidents actually fall to just gassing out.
Yeah.
Like that's quite a big chunk. Because this is a 7x7 kilometer island.
It's a gigantic feat.
It's large.
So we are automatically going to stat everybody. Well, here, let's just go ahead and get the stat column. So what did we made Madden style stats. By the way, when we publish the entire narrative to this, and there is a narrative, like it is written out. John and I built the bones. John wrote it. It is fantastic. You will see kind of as everybody dies line by line, and we will publish all of our stats.
Yes.
And there is quite a bit, as well as our sourced material for how we got to these stats. If you have problems with it, suck a nut, do your own research. I'm sure we miss shit.
Make comments.
Whatever.
We'll fix it next year.
We'll fix
in
it
2020.
Yeah. The next time there's a president, we'll update it every time, and that'll be that.
All right, so stat number 1 we've already plugged, which is stamina. Stamina is the big thing. Basically, you don't win because of stamina, but you lose because of stamina.
Yes, you need it to be in the game.
You need it to be in the game. The next one was...
So just for that, what we're looking for is either younger presidents that were in good health, presidents that were coming right out of war, so they had to be in a certain level of physical condition, presidents that had great aerobic, like they were known to run every day or swim every day or ride a bike. Some people that presidents that had current athletic regimens when they became president.
And then on the other end, if the president, the main adjective used to describe their health was sickly, they got hit hard in this category.
Yes. And by the way, William Henry Harrison, we're not buying that bullshit that you caught a flu while you were giving your inauguration, dude. You were sick with the virus that killed you 30 days after you became president. So we're not buying that old wives' tale shit. Sorry. Spoiler alert, William Henry Harrison doesn't win.
The other category which we considered less important than stamina was general strength. So physical strength, would you be able to overpower another president if you were close to them? Because in the beginning of this, nobody has any weapons.
Yeah.
Nobody has any guns. So who the stronger, the physically stronger one will be more resilient to, one, parachuting in, which, is hard. And then 2, general hand-to-hand sort of overpowering.
So this
movement.
is, height, weight, and just physical prowess if you were known to be a fist fighter or something like that.
If you had some sort of fighting or martial arts background. The third category, which was weighted heavily, was military experience. Specifically, one, did you have military training at all?
Yeah.
Was sort of the bare minimum. And then two, did you see frontline combat? Regardless of war, the type of war, were you on the front line? Did you kill people? Did your friends die?
We highly ranked this because not only is it valuable for marksman training, specifically all warfare training, all modern warfare training involves how to load a gun, what a gun is, how to aim a gun, how to shoot a gun. A certain level, obviously, of basic training is just getting you in physical condition. But also, we valued frontline experience a lot because if you were immediately thrust into this, it helps to have been in a chaotic death surrounds you and you are operating on your wits and instinct to survive before this happens.
Can you keep a cool head when everyone is trying to kill you? Do you have a record of like being brave in the face of gunfire? That is big. And then the fourth category was straight up marksmanship.
Yes.
Like in PUBG, if you can have the best stamina, whatever, in the world, but if you're shooting and you can't hit anything, that's you're gonna be out quick.
Yes. And the best actual PUBG players are often the best marksmen. You know, if you can headshot, you are going to be somebody who's better at the game than somebody who simply cannot.
So it is possible to win PUBG without firing a shot, but it is much easier if you shoot very well.
The best players shoot very well. So we are assuming there then that marksmen will be better at the game as they're going to be able to shoot from farther to kill. Now, here is the first big issue that we kind of had to make a philosophical decision on.
Right, and I see a lot of people in chat bringing it up right now, which is the founding fathers, people who were president pre-modern weaponry. How do they fare?
So we ultimately settled on this. We didn't hold it against people who were born before modern weaponry or before the car, because we assumed, specifically with the weapons, that it would actually be easier and they would pick it up faster than you might think. So yes, it is foreign, but the mechanics of a revolver have kind of been the same forever. It was loading and firing it that were the pain in the ass. And if you've now removed that, then they will actually be, able to go, to go further. Now,
so even
I'm sure there's
from
some motherfucker in Colonial Williamsburg who's gonna be like, no, that wouldn't be how it goes. But that's how we did it.
That is how we saw it. Our reasoning was, one, guns, while having changed a lot, they still look the same. They're recognizable as guns. These people would not see a M16 and wonder what it did. It has a trigger, it has a barrel, etc. Also, they're actually easier to use, and the folks who were using the front loader stuff had way better instincts for ammo conservation. Had way better instincts for guerrilla warfare. Especially since they were coming off of just defeating the British, who was a much technologically superior force, whereas everyone else would have been sort of in an America wins type of situation, at least in any sort of army on army combat. So we didn't hold technical prowess against them, assuming that. Especially also, they have a lot of time.
Yeah.
There's a lot of time on this island to be like, what's this? Bah, bah, bah. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. So I guess the only other philosophical question that we had to answer that makes it this fundamentally different thing than just an out-and-out every man for himself PUBG game are the personal relationships. And would you say that this probably caused this was the most kind of artistic that we sort of had to get, is assuming we had to make certain assumptions about how people would react to seeing each other. And remember that if we are going with the initial idea that as soon as you are taking the oath of office, you are in the game, that means that some presidents know more about the other people than the others do. And
absolutely. I mean, so many of these people knew each other for a long, long time.
Yeah.
They have, like, some are related.
Yes.
So we did definitely incorporate some elements of teaming up. Some presidents may have not gotten along super well with their vice presidents, but then, like, half of the equation is now playing the game with their president, who was literally murdered earlier that day.
That's the biggest thing, is there are several presidents through history that watched their predecessor get murdered, and then that day they become the president of the United States. So we are assuming that that person in our thought experiment is literally taking the oath of office and then being beamed into our bizarre murder island where they see the person they just saw died right in front of them. And we assumed that in all cases to varying degrees, that is something that even if they were not close, imagine if you saw the person at your job that you hated murdered in front of you, and then you saw them alive in a contest to see who could be alive the longest, you would be more sympathetic toward them not dying again.
Exactly. So we see JFK and LBJ is going to be awkward in the chat. It is. It is very awkward.
So there is far more grouping in our thought experiment than there would be in an average game of PUBG.
Right. So the way that we saw this was, yes, all of the presidents are in it to win it for themselves. However, some of them hate each other and some of them like each other more. So the idea was, if a president would reasonably be expected to say, I want to win, but if I don't, I would rather you win than anybody else.
Yeah.
Then they grouped up.
Yes. And also, this is kind of our tipping the scales back a little bit on the stamina decision. That, like, since we're making them human, it felt right to also allow them the more human instinct to group and protect each other, and if they knew each other.
Right. Not always along party lines, more along special circumstances.
Yes. All right. So, well, I think we're gonna save
we'll save the blow by blow.
We'll save the blow by blow for when we produce it, but we will go through and we will reveal the winner on this podcast. Let's just go through our first kind of decisions. They are now on the plane, and they are parachuting in.
Who dies first?
I guess that's the first question, right? Who dies first? And also, we now go ahead and get everybody in the chat room right now.
Yeah.
Get your guesses as to who wins right now.
Who wins real life, real physics, presidential PUBG? Or this is who dies first.
Okay, so yeah, let's go ahead and have who dies first. Who dies first? John, you did some research on parachutes.
I certainly did. The parachute that is used in PUBG is most likely the MC4 Ram Air Freefall Personnel Parachute System, which was used by Special Forces up until recently.
Okay.
It has a maximum weight limit of 350 pounds, when you include the weight of the parachute itself.
Which is?
I have it written down somewhere. I think it's like 35 pounds.
Okay, so you're looking, if you are pushing anywhere close to 3 bills, you're putting yourself in danger of, even if it's popping automatically that you might be coming in too fast.
It is very strongly said that this is not the like danger zone. This is the structural failure point. Like, you do not want to be anywhere close to this, because if you bounce too hard when it opens, that the weight will exceed the limit, and then the whole system will fail.
Yeah. Who is injured to the point of being taken out of the game by parachute?
Well, William H. Taft, weighing in at 316 pounds.
316?
316 has parachute failure and dies on impact.
By the way, this also kind of takes out one of the more vicious natural rivalries in presidential history. If Taft were a more spry fellow, you would think that he would have a tremendous vendetta against Teddy Roosevelt. If you want good, the Doris Kearns Goodwin book about Teddy Roosevelt and Taft, who I like to think of as the notorious B.I.G. and Tupac of progressive politics in America, they hated each other. But remember, Roosevelt wouldn't know that they hate each other. Taft would.
Right.
But we don't have to worry about that because Taft ultimately is too fat to survive the parachute.
Too much McDonald's there. Yeah. Also wounded. Now this was more difficult. So when you're parachuting, the heavier you are, the faster you hit the ground.
Yes.
The faster you're moving when you hit the ground. So we also did incorporate people who were not at the total limit.
Wait, I've seen a lot of people saying that we should have at least let them make it to the island. Taft would not have been a player in this game. Like, let me say very, very clearly, yes, he died. He would not. He's 300 pounds, and this is a game of stamina. Like, he would not have been a player. Him coming out of the game is not much of a loss, in my opinion, in our opinion.
Right. So the two Grover Clevelands are wounded. When they land, Chester A. Arthur rolls his ankle or something because he's pretty heavy, and Donald Trump, because as age, the biggest factor besides weight in parachuting injuries is age.
Yep.
Donald Trump would probably not make it to the ground unscathed.
Yes. So for everybody else other than Taft, we are looking at injuries to their legs. Possibly injuries to their arms as they're trying to come down and brace themselves. They are inhibited from, again, doing what is most necessary in this game, running and hiding.
Running and hiding.
Scavenging, running and hiding.
Moving at probably around 3.5 kilometers in 30 minutes or less.
So everybody else lands without any more significant injuries than they would have had before. So that's just the initial landing, how people deal with it.
Everyone else is live and in the game. And this is definitely where it starts to get a little bit more artistic. So I don't know how you want to do this. Do you want to just look at the top 10 by stats and then have them wait to see how it plays out?
Well, no. Let's just go through some of the major deaths. Some of the people that die early.
So one of the groupings that we have, potentially my favorite grouping.
Yes.
Is where do we have it here? It is Andrew Jackson, Martin Van Buren, and James K. Polk.
Yes. Now, why we grouped them together because they were aware of each other. They were contemporaries in time.
Right, contemporaries in time, aware of each other. All of them were vicious racists.
Yeah. So we grouped them based on their hatred for one of the presidents on the plane.
Exactly. So they're all in a corner just staring over towards Big O and muttering to themselves.
Cynical Brit says, did FDR parachute without a wheelchair? I think we gave him the wheelchair, right?
We did give him the wheelchair.
Yeah.
Well, actually, no, he wouldn't have had the wheelchair because that would have probably put him over the weight. So he did not have his wheelchair.
Okay. So, spoiler alert, FDR does not do much either.
So FDR doesn't have a wheelchair. But the reason that Andrew Jackson, Martin Van Buren, and James K. Polk is one of my favorite pairings is because Jackson immediately betrays them using pistols that Martin Van Buren had on during his inauguration. One president lands on the island wearing guns.
With guns. Because so Martin Van Buren, true story, was packing during his inauguration. He hands a gun to Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson says there are no teams and caps both of them.
Yeah, that was an interesting one. Van Buren was famous for being, when he was a senator, on the floor in the Senate with his pistols.
Yeah.
Just why not, right? Different time.
We also obviously took the Andrew Jackson, the viciousness there as he beat a man to death with a stick.
Andrew Jackson, there's a
He's
Google.
He's an actual murderer.
There's a Google for you. Check out Andrew Jackson. There is a man. I mean, I saw in the chat earlier people talking about Reagan getting shot and survived. Jackson got shot during a duel and took it on purpose so that he could line up his shot and shoot the other guy dead.
He was a tough son of a bitch.
Yes.
And spoiler alert, he is ruthless. He, whatever mitigating factors from stamina, which he is not the most spry at the moment that he becomes president. But we allowed him to use some of his more vicious strategic advantage to his...
And also just sheer force of will.
Yeah.
Like that is a man who is motivated by rage.
Yes. He was
and
an
has
angry
a lot
person.
of it. So what is one of your favorite? What is one of your favorite pairings? Both.
My favorite death is this comes fairly early. Either of these guys make much noise, but Trump kills Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton is aware of Donald Trump and thinks that they are friendly at the point that the young senator from Arkansas is mingling in national politics. Remember that Bill Clinton's campaign in the Democratic primary really took off during the New York primary. It's where he overtook Paul Tsongas, who was looked at as the favorite in that election at the time on the Democratic side. We are assuming that at this point, as he is raising money and mingling through New York City, that he is friendly with the then celebrity Donald Trump. Donald Trump, obviously not a fan of Bill Clinton, and despite the fact that Trump is injured, Trump takes him out. So either of them make much noise in the game, but Trump kills Clinton, which felt fitting, considering...
Right, so here is this is what comes in Ken from Chicago. Why the free hell would Clinton trust Trump, who hates his wife Hillary? Clinton has no idea at this point.
Remember,
they're friends.
He is the only moments that he knows of Donald Trump is what we are assuming is the New York socialite scene that he had certainly worked through the primary as well as in the presidency that launched him from obscurity as an Arkansas governor to the White House. Now, Donald Trump knows everything, but Bill Clinton does not. It's 1992 Bill Clinton.
Yeah, and 2018 or 2017 Trump.
Yeah. So that was my favorite. Man.
I also love the JFK LBJ because that is like putting yourself in LBJ's shoes there. He was frustrated as all hell as JFK's vice president.
Yes.
That is very very
did not
well
like each other.
Did not like each other. It was very well documented. He was constantly trying to do stuff. And then, by all accounts, he came to life on the plane. Like he came off of the plane where he was inaugurated after JFK was shot as a different person. Was the predominant narrative there. So him having just had this, oh my gosh, I have to take the reins and get in control. As this realization is happening,
yeah,
JFK appearing in front of him alive again has to be just absolutely mind-blowing.
This is like Lost.
This
right?
is Lost.
Like this is a miracle. This person, for these presidents, these people have come back alive. So we kind of made them a little bit of an odd couple pairing, as LBJ knows that he dies. He knows how he dies. He literally just saw him die. And yet here they are. So that is a good pairing.
And then also LBJ had a heart condition.
Yeah.
That was, aggravated by the stress of JFK dying. There was a document I found that some doctor said that, JFK had come in, people trying to save him, and then LBJ was like wheeled in.
Yeah.
Like next door.
Yeah.
So this would put a terrible strain on poor old LBJ's circulatory system.
I will say my favorite. Oh man, there's my favorite in my heart is the Virginia Boys.
Yes.
The Virginia Boys. That would be it's Madison, Jefferson, and Washington.
It is Washington, Jefferson, and Monroe.
Madison was later.
Yeah, Madison doesn't do so well.
But the Virginia Boys are probably my favorite. Let's just say that they wind up making much more noise because, again, these guys have literally just fought a guerrilla war. Like they are in Washington's case, he is fresh off the battlefield, and now you might imagine that he is put more at ease doing this thing than he was thinking about trying to just be a bureaucrat and argue with people. Also, despite the fact that Jefferson was kind of a nerd, he was a spry fellow.
He was a spry fellow. He was also a great shot. Jefferson, in terms of like gun aficionados, Jefferson was second only to Roosevelt in terms of just sheer appreciation for firearms and shooting things with them.
He was a regular gunfighter, or just used a gun a lot, which is something that, again, we valued very, very highly. But I would say probably the most effective tandem in this game are the Bushes.
The Bush Boys. Yeah.
The Bush Boys. Number one, they are, George H.W. Bush, a World War II veteran, somebody that certainly would have no problem parachuting, as he was a pilot and did parachute, I think, in combat. George W. Bush, obviously Texas Air National Guard, not exactly the front lines, but was a athlete. This was somebody that was, even during his run for presidency, was running on a regular basis and biking on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
They are probably the most on the same page, physically fit, combat experience, marksman kind of statted duo in the game that is used to these weapons and now knows everything. So while we're assuming that the Revolutionary War presidents wouldn't like look at a gun and be like, "Bah, what sorcery?" They probably aren't as great at reloading. They aren't as great at understanding where they should look for stuff, what stuff looks like.
They may just not even be as comfortable with them. And would rely on other tactics.
So those two, they're not exactly Navy SEALs,
right?
But they are probably the most effective strike team in the game.
When ranked against the other presidents, they might as well be. Another note: someone in the chat mentioned Obama's smoking. We did take that into consideration. However, Obama is a smoker, but in a time where recreational fitness is the norm.
Yeah.
So just even the most unhealthy president from the modern era would be able to run circles around the unhealthy presidents from days of yore.
Exactly. So, I mean, the idea that this is something that you should be doing, that your doctor, that a doctor for many of these presidents would be like, "Oh, are you feeling bad? Here's a leech." Whereas presidents or doctors now would be like, "Are you feeling bad? You should probably be getting more air and running."
Yeah.
Right? You should be doing physical. Get on the elliptical machine, fatty. All right. And also, yeah, Cynical Brit is doing a great job here. Is that that's implying that the other presidents weren't smokers, which is probably foolhardy. In fact, you could make the argument that Obama is smoking the best cigarettes he could for him
once a day,
as opposed to the like tobacco blunts that were being rolled by many of the presidents that we are talking about here, including the Virginia boys, who obviously were all smokers.
Another surprisingly, adept contender in this game was Abraham Lincoln. Yes. I think coming into it, we were assuming that he wouldn't do as well because he was a boxer, but this is not a boxer, match.
Amateur wrestler,
right?
Somebody that was an athlete, which we took very highly. Tall and a little lanky, obviously. So.
He's a tall target. He's not a wide target.
Yeah.
But what was interesting was Lincoln has a historical reputation of being a bad shot. However, it turns out most of those documented bad shot experiments were like the gun being broken, and Lincoln actually was like a crack shot, like to the point where he like would never miss the target. So Lincoln gets like second life as a distance fighter in our take.
At a certain point, something that you will see in this narrative is that Abraham Lincoln gets a sniper rifle and uses it effectively. That again, if we are assuming that these presidents that have never seen these weapons before can use them, like that they will know what's happening, a marksman like Abe Lincoln would be able to get a rifle with a scope and be like, oh my God, this is so much easier than anything I have ever done before. And now this is a game genie, effectively.
Yes. Oh, we do have a really rad scene with the loot crate, with the care package, and it is contentious.
It is contentious. Many of the presidents descend on it. Well, can we say who the presidents are? Because I think this is probably our most star-studded moment until we get to the end.
That's right. That was one of the bigger scenes right there. All right, let's find it.
It is the tandem of Abe Lincoln.
So it's in reverse order. The scene is witnessed by Barack Obama choosing his moment.
Yeah.
Calvin Coolidge goes out first.
Okay.
He just makes a dead run to it. Then we got Nixon, the Nixon and Reagan team, reluctant Reagan.
A reluctant Reagan, which we paired them together because both familiar with each other through California politics. Both were governor of California. Reagan, of course, knows how Nixon ends, so he's not particularly in love with the idea of teaming with Nixon, but since his most natural ally, H.W. Bush, is teaming with his son,
right?
This is the closest person that he would naturally gravitate to.
So Coolidge goes, Nixon, Reagan, and then we'll leave the who actually picks it up as a.
No, we can say.
All right. Lincoln ends up popping Reagan in the back of the head and taking the sniper rifle, and Obama skitters off into the woods.
Yeah.
He decides it's not worth it.
Man, dude, y'all are gonna want to read this. Like, this is some good shit. I'm letting you know.
Oh yeah, that's one of my favorite scenes in the walkthrough.
Now,
also, FDR, man.
He just he
well in PUBG, you got the motorcycles with the sidecars.
Oh yes.
Harry Truman and FDR go on a bit of a rampage.
Yep.
With a motorcycle.
FDR does, he gets in the sidecar. He is being driven around. Now here's probably the biggest name we have not mentioned, and there's probably a reason for it, because he does do very well, as many people have called out in the chat room. He is somebody that you would immediately think would have skills based on everything that we've said we valued. And that, of course, is Teddy Roosevelt. Why is Teddy Roosevelt one of our highest statted players?
So Teddy Roosevelt is has had almost unparalleled frontline experience to the point where he like charges up a hill to a defensive position and takes it. He is the biggest gun aficionado. He had the largest of all the presidents. He had the largest private gun collection. I think 216 different weapons.
Yeah.
He was a regular sportsman. He was young. He has a lot of stamina and just physical strength. Plus,
had taken a bullet.
He has gotten shot and then gave a speech while shot.
Yeah. So he's a tough son of a bitch. He's seen frontline combat experience. Obviously, the Spanish-American War, the charging of San Juan Hill, Rough Riders, yada, yada, yada. And
also, his natural sort of tendencies would probably send him out into the middle of the gunfire straight on if it weren't for the fact that William Henry Harrison had literally just died. So he has a little bit of that tempered... McKinley. McKinley had just died. So his natural aggressive urges would have been tempered a bit.
Would probably be at their lowest point in his life the day after he sees the person who is in office ahead of him die from a gunshot wound.
Exactly. Also, just general woodsman experience.
Yeah, not a stranger to hunting, not a stranger to just walking through nature. He was an outdoorsman in general. Is there anybody else? All right, we'll just call to the chat. Is there anybody else? People are asking about Eisenhower. Where do we stat Eisenhower?
All right. Let me switch my sheet here to be sorted by stats.
All right. So the obviously Eisenhower older at 62, but was one of the first presidents that came since some of the military presidents from the early part of our republic that was elected without previous governmental experience. So people always associate him with the military. Had played a very vital role in World War II. But ultimately, he is 62. It's been a very long time since he's seen anything close to front line experience. And I would probably say, was it Harrison?
William Henry Harrison?
Yeah.
William Henry Harrison was statted very high.
Yeah. He's another one that probably, if you're thinking about Eisenhower as a military president, William Henry Harrison was younger and had closer frontline experience. So he is somebody that we did stat very high in the game.
Yeah, Eisenhower was one of the better
Jay
marksmen.
Millius asks, what about America's first gay president, James Buchanan? He dies from a broken heart thinking about his lover who did not make it.
Yeah, Harrison is statted highly, but was,
Oh, wait,
sick.
no. Who am I talking about? I'm talking about somebody else then. It's not Harrison. It's, who do we have in that top 10? Anyway, all right. It's all there. Grant. That's who I'm talking about. Grant, not Harrison.
Yes.
Yeah, so everything I just said about Harrison, replace that with Grant. Sorry about that. That was my bad.
There's a lot of these guys to keep in your
head. It's a lot
of
presidents. By the way,
a lot of presidents.
You should have let Taft hit the island. We have to eliminate 45 presidents, effectively by our own imagination. So eliminating presidents is just something that happens. It's also something that happens in PUBG. Look, people get killed because they just happen to land next to other people, or they don't know what they're doing, or they happen to walk out into the road when they're not supposed to.
So let's see. This is an interesting one. Like, who was sick? Who was physically sick during their inauguration? So that's a fun one. James Buchanan.
Yep.
Had dysentery.
Yeah.
And dysentery.
Sure.
Andrew Johnson had typhoid fever.
Yipes.
That's a bad one.
Uh-huh.
And then Chester A. Arthur had gallstones.
That's something that you don't want to walk around with.
Yeah.
Do the Grover Clevelands team up?
They team up all the way to dying out of the zone.
Yeah.
Because they're fat.
They're fat. They're very fat. Yeah. So both Grover Clevelands die out of the zone. All right, John. We're at the 50-minute mark. We should reveal our top 5.
The top 5.
And then the winner.
By stats.
Yeah.
Or no, by story.
By story.
All right, let me back it up.
These are again our
2.
Unlike the presidential
3,
knife fight, which you can kind of
4.
sort of draw out like a UFC tail of the tape.
Mm-hmm.
This is obviously up to a little bit more of our interpretation. So if your favorites didn't make it, do your own goddamn research.
Yeah, write one yourself.
Write one yourself.
All right.
These are the last 5 remaining in the zone based on our run through of the game.
Andrew Jackson.
Mean motherfucker.
Mm-hmm. George H.W. Bush. George W. Bush.
That's a tremendous advantage for the Bushes. Both Bushes make it to the final 5.
Teddy Roosevelt.
Again, I mean, for every reason that we said before, there's very few presidents that have his kind of bona fides.
And George Washington.
Bet you didn't see that coming.
Mm-hmm.
George Dubs. Now, we will save how it gets there. But, John, who are our final 2?
Our final 2 are Teddy Roosevelt and George Washington.
John, we made the artistic decision to end our game of presidential PUBG with 2 presidents. Now, here's something that comes into this.
Mm-hmm.
Teddy Roosevelt was a history buff. He was
loved.
extraordinarily reverential of the founding fathers.
Yes, of George Washington and Abraham Lincoln in particular. Those 2 were his favorites. He did like Jackson as well, but Washington and Lincoln were his favorite.
He's a man, obviously, who took some things very, very seriously. His reverence for those, by all of our research, was certainly one of them. How do we end our presidential PUBG?
We end presidential PUBG with 10 paces.
10 paces.
10 paces and shoot.
A duel.
A duel.
An honor bound gentleman's duel between Teddy Roosevelt and George Washington. What weapons are they brandishing?
Teddy Roosevelt has a 6-shooter revolver, as fits the format. George Washington has an AK-47.
So here we go. A duel. 10 paces and shoot. Teddy Roosevelt has a 6-shooter, an AK-47 for George Washington. And who is the winner of our presidential PUBG?
Our winner is Teddy Roosevelt.
I think you kind of have to have him. I mean, he's kind of built for this.
Yeah.
We the more we talked through it, the more we kind of felt that the founding fathers were going to go further. George Washington is he is tough on a level that we know. We've retired those levels of tough. Even Teddy Roosevelt, would look at, do some research again on the Revolutionary War, what these guys went through. There was, I think it's one of the McCullough books, talks about infantry soldiers in the Revolutionary War would drink like a handle of rum a man a day, literally just because the surroundings were so tough. People are dying of open wounds and stuff like that. It was just it's hard to fathom how shoe leather tough these people were. George Washington probably going to bring that in there. But at the end of the day, for his familiarity with modern warfare, just the general attributes that Teddy Roosevelt has. It's really hard to see anybody based on research, unless you're going to make up reasons why people die, which we have to in this. But ultimately, the winner has to be somebody that you got to be able to rely on the research on.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of, it's hard to go with anybody but Teddy.
And to be fair, like Washington tags him.
Yes.
That's another thing. Washington does tag him. It just doesn't do the job.
Yes, he ultimately has a weapon that, while more powerful, obviously, is not quite the marksman's weapon. But although something that I think a weapon that if George Washington is going to see any weapon out there on the battlefield and become in love with it, it's going to be something like an AK-47, which could for guerrilla warfare is amazing.
And it's still like wooden. It's not one of these fancy super with materials that haven't even been invented yet. It is familiar enough. He would have done fine.
Old School Billy says there's no way Washington would have had any clue how to load and operate a modern AR.
Operate, you pull the trigger. It was already loaded.
Yeah, so he's given. We don't need to go into it, but he is given a fully ready to operate loaded weapon.
Yeah.
So there's not much that he has to figure out beyond point and click.
This thing? This is familiar.
Yeah.
The trigger?
So there we go.
Yeah, that's our story. I had a lot of fun. A lot of fun putting this together.
I think everyone's gonna really, really like.
The presidents were psychotic. Every single one of them. Like you think about as a kid, you're like, ooh, presidents. They must be some kind of special person. No, they're all just miserable, sick.
Yeah.
Oh my God. There's so many just hilarious stories if you look through into
For those
this.
of you still asking, Protester Gen, it's PUBG weapons come empty. Trust us, he is.
He has an AK-47.
He is given a loaded, ready to operate AK-47. It is preloaded by somebody else, and he gets it past that.
Mm-hmm.
So that is something that we thought about.
And also,
not load or dress this weapon.
This is also at the end of the game. They've had the entire game to figure out how to load and operate modern weapons.
Yeah.
Which they do.
All right. Well, that's what it is. This, again, will all be published. In fact, there might be a chance that you are on a website, and this is embedded at the top of this article, and you are reading it right now. But that is that. Look, this was a labor of love for John and I. We are obsessed with presidents from doing The Contender. We've already done a lot of this research, and it was amazing to pour the time and effort into this. Hopefully you guys have had a good time listening to this and reading about it and thinking about it yourselves. If you have any thoughts on who would win, go ahead and email us, theyoungamerican@gmail.com, with any of your thoughts. Again, we are always open to revising this, and whenever there is a new president, we are always open to replaying this game to see whether or not anything else would happen. John, any final thoughts here on presidential PUBG?
Final thoughts. I hope you guys like it. I had a lot of fun putting this together with Justin, and I hope that you guys have a great time reading it. Again, like you said, if you have thoughts, if there are things that we didn't think of, do write in and let us know, and we will update it to make sure that everything is accurately recounted. We could only dedicate so much time to it, and 45 presidents is a lot. I did read all of the medical histories of every single president that existed, but there may obviously be things that slip through the cracks, so please do let us know.
And look, I think this is to me, this is a more fascinating thought experiment than the knife fight, because I think the knife fight is ultimately just just height, weight, reach, And then you kind of read into a little bit of like who was most merciless and stuff like this. Whereas I think for fans of American history and presidential history specifically, there are a lot of interesting wrinkles here, specifically in team-ups and specifically in what kind of state of mind they're in and in what health they're in. So hopefully nerds for that end of murder had a good time listening and reading this. All right. Again, thecontender.us is the card game that John and I came up with. You can go ahead and buy it at thecontender.us or pick it up at Amazon if you like Prime. But all the mini expansions you have to get on our site because that's where we sell them. Anything else?
No, indeed.
At Justin R. Young on Twitter and everywhere else on social media. Go ahead and find back episodes of this podcast, which isn't always like this. We're normally talking about modern politics, but this is our little bank episode we're doing for the New Year's holiday. Go ahead and find back episodes of that at bonerwars.com and theyoungamerican@gmail.com if you want to email me about any part of this. That about wraps it up, folks. There are some shows that talk about politics, some shows that talk about politics, and some shows that even talk about politics. This is the only one that talks about all three. We will see you guys next week.
Yes. Come on.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.